Okay, we're back with my friend David Ponsler and his work over his left shoulder, talking about David's work, his life, and the authentic identity theory. So, David, tell me, have you told other people about the authentic identity theory?
Yes, I have. Anytime I have a friend that's has a young child, I've been telling them to watch what their passions are when they're around the ages of 5 and 6, because that'll reveal who they really are and therefore what they should be doing in life.
So, how do you think that helps the parent, and how do you think that helps the child? Because too often times, we're guided into pathways, or occupations that we really don't like, but it brings a lot of fame or a lot of money to us. How do you think knowing this theory could help the parent?
Well, I think we all know somebody whose father was a doctor who forced their son to be a doctor and who was miserable. I fired my mother's doctor because that's how I pinned him. But I think if a parent, and all parents want to do right by their kids, if they have an idea of your theory and they are paying attention and they remember that, and then the child seems to want to go in that direction, I think it would help them accept that, because it might be something they're not hoping for.
How does that help the
Like a
child?
musician
Yeah,
versus a lawyer,
that's true.
that kind of thing. But so therefore, if the parent is more open to their child following their passion, and then that child does follow his passion, then he will have a better life.
How does that help the child as a child?
Uh, well, I think even as a child, it would have to, if you're validating their creativity in whatever way it is, or letting them play with bugs and later they'll become a biologist, I think they'll be probably happier then. I've never thought of it that way, but it certainly makes sense.
I think
If you
it's.
let your child follow his passion as a child, he'll probably be a happier child.
Where do you think they learn the passion?
I think that comes from very deep. Um, in my own case, I honestly think it came from a different life.
So
I
you
don't
think
think
you
this is the first time I've been a metal worker.
so you think you were born with this passion.
I think so.
So what happens when you don't, to you personally, to your life, when you don't follow the passion and you try to follow what society tells you to be or become or to do? What happens
Hmm.
to David?
Yeah. Well, first off, I consider myself very lucky to have had the opportunity to grow up in a shop of metal workers, a family of metal workers, I should have said. Had that not happened, I'd have to wonder how much more difficult it would be. Um, and I think I've subverted your question. Say the last part of it again.
How does your life revolve once you don't follow that passion?
Yeah,
If you don't pursue what it is you know you should do, what happens to David?
yeah. I had a period of my life where I paused for a little bit and worked on the renovation of a house for, like, in a way, close to 6 years. And I developed a problem with alcohol, and I didn't actually come to that conclusion until being sober for several years, and I started thinking about your theory. It's probably when you started talking to me about this that I looked back and I thought, that's why I was doing that. And for now, I've been sober for 13 years.
I've never seen you take a drink.
No,
So
not
so
since I've known you. Yes.
I think it's important that we understand who we are. And I think that sometimes that we take paths that we shouldn't. And then I think the consequence would be some of the things that you have experienced when you don't follow your passion. Where did your ideas come from? I mean, that piece over your shoulder and the pieces throughout your home, and the pieces I've seen at the Cumberland Museum and in the magazines, where do these ideas come from? Because guys like Harry, surely, I don't think of these kind of
Yeah.
designs.
Yeah. Well, to answer that, let me start by saying go back to the duality of what I do. When I do architectural metalwork for a fine residence, it takes a lot of planning. I do drawings, everything has to fit the architecture. It's a lot of communications. So when I do sculptural work, like the one over my shoulder, it's more freeform. So I do not draw them, I just create them. And having been asked a similar question prior to a museum show, usually the artist statement I use is it's just a culmination. My sculpture is a culmination of 40 or 50 years of forging metal, and all the skills that I've learned over 30 or 40 years is all tied up in those pieces.
And you have had very little training as far as academics or college or formal classes. These are things that you learned to form later in life. The techniques, the how, I mean, did you just wake up and say, "Here's how I bend metal"?
I started bending metal and forging metal when I was 14. And back then, there was not the internet. At the time, I had no book. So it was really, and knew no one else doing it. So it was a hard row. But I've attended a lot of conferences. I have a lot of friends that are blacksmiths all over the world, and I've traveled a lot. So it's been a slow process of learning to get to this point, and it's never boring because unfortunately I'm still learning with every project. It's like, oh my, that came out of the left field, and here I go. How am I going to respond to that? So it's constant learning.
It's excellent.
Yeah.
Well, you know me, I believe that people can go to college or to attend a university if they can, if they are able, if their time permits and their money permits. But I've never been one to believe that someone should go to college to get a job. So when we tell our young people that they need to get a degree, how do you think we should tell them the purposes for getting a degree? Because you can't do what you do with the degree. I've seen what you do. I've seen your hard work. I've seen you, bending metal and using the fire when it's 100 degrees here in Florida. Um, should someone go to college, and if so, why do they go to college if they want to be an artist?
Uh, that is a complex question. I personally did not go to college to learn art. Um, I took one drawing class at university, and and that was okay. Sometimes I wished I had more background in drawing. I draw every project I do, but in a lot of ways, it's more drafting and design than actual drawing. I'm really not good at like figure drawing and things like that. And I think if I had had more of a formal education, I would have benefited from it. But at the same time, I think there could have been some disadvantages. My life would be totally different today if I had gone to college. And I'm not sure it would have been better, personally.
For those that don't know, a CAD is a computer assisted drawing. David doesn't use. He draws all his work by hand. Um, the CAD has advantages, but it lacks the artistic value that David provides. Do you think you would have learned more about the cultures of others? You would learn more about the world around you, and could your art have benefited from that if you would have gone to college and studied other cultures, other people's ways of life? Do you think that would have added to the art?
Definitely, there was a major event in my life because I was born in Jacksonville, Florida, and really had never traveled. But when I was 17, I spent 28 days in Europe on a school trip, and that was in many ways a life changer because of the culture and just realizing that there are so many different ways of doing things culturally. But at the same time, I saw the famous artwork of Europe. And I think it just gave me an aspiration. It's like, I don't want to just make this simple thing, but if I apply myself, I can do great things.
Well, this is not rehearsed. David doesn't know that I was going to do this. I came to visit him. However, I'm going to end the video now. May we take a tour of your shop and to show the people how you do what you do and some of your other artwork?
Sure.
Is that all right?
Yes.